beginning of some of these jokes Steve Allen told one time. He said, I'm so blind I got to have contact lenses to see my glasses.
17 years old. Wow. Yeah. So I came close, and then I had another gentleman that I knew was suspicious in the bank, and I just went over and
You doing okay?
conversation with him, and he left. If you talk to them, they won't stay. And he robbed the family security out here. He left the belt line and came out here and robbed the family security out here. I mean, it wasn't even an hour later.
My 14-month-old great-granddaughter, her mom, that's her, just hold her phone. She had it the other day, and she had to run into the kitchen to do something. Came back and her phone was ringing, and she realized that she had somehow dialed 911. So she hung it up real quick, and then they called back. And she said, I'm so sorry, my 1-year-old daughter. But I don't see how she did that. Of all the numbers, how she
Yeah,
did
it's random.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunday School at the Walnut Grove Baptist Church. We're not doing a full Sunday School. It's only the adult classes. And we have several who faithfully attend out there in internet land. We greet you this morning and welcome you to our class. And we have a few that are in-house today. Only 2 lessons on the Song of Solomon. Tradition says that Solomon wrote over 1,000 songs. We don't have them on record, of course. Evidently, he was very prolific. He probably had a whole team or a pool of people who followed him around everywhere he went and wrote down everything that he said. Either at his command or just simply because that's what they did. But over time, and because of the tumultuous history of Israel, we do not have all of those records. But that's the reason that this song is called by 2 names. Song of Solomon, of course, the introductory verses say that Solomon, King Solomon, wrote this. But evidently it was his favorite, or it was his most popular, or it was one that was selected to be representative of all of his other works. And so that's why it's called the Song of Songs. In other words, among all the songs, this is the one. So I like to describe this as divine romance. Actually, the Song of Songs is a description, and I know and I feel the inclination, and I've delved into that last Sunday, some inclination to see Solomon in the story and the woman as at least one of his brides, and it seemed to make the most sense to me that she might possibly have been his first wife. But it is difficult to imagine that King Solomon had anything at all like a normal love life or romance life of physical intimacy. And so probably those constraints are not entirely valid. This is in the Word of God to show us that God approves of, and it was his idea, physical intimacy. And so ordinarily, and even now, I would not read every verse and every passage that is in these 8 chapters. It's pretty racy stuff. It is a conversation in verse. It is a song, a love song, between 2 people who are in love. And they explore every avenue of that love, and so sometimes when it describes physical intimacy, it is, I think they did not have even the inhibitions that I might have. We've gone through eras in our own human history where human sexuality was denied or ignored, or that it was kept very secretive and it was not discussed publicly. There was a certain realm of vocabulary and certain things you talked about in what we would call mixed company, and certain things you would not. And then we have gone through times like the 60s when it seemed that everybody was bent on exploring every kind of human sexuality and doing it openly, publicly, freely. So it seems that these two people, though it seems that they are very open and outward with their feelings. But there are some things, I'm still capable, I guess, of blushing, so there are some things in the Song of Songs that are of that nature. There are only 2 lessons in our Sunday School Quarterly that address the Song of Solomon, and so this will be the conclusion. And I'm looking at it today, again, not covering step by step, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. Let me encourage you. I would do this. I've done this over the years. Encourage people. I probably would never preach a sermon that does an expository treatment of the Song of Solomon and look through every chapter and every verse. There's a great deal of repetition. If you listen to 2 young people in love, it says, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. You know, and then you're done. You think, but it's just more. I ended my lesson last week with looking at what I think of different kinds of love through the years, through a person's life. Here, it looks like 2 children playing. They have some balls or balloons. I call that the light stage. And if boys and girls in their childhood are able to find people who like them or the people whom they like on various levels, then they might tell you they had a good childhood. So I had lots of people whom I liked in the elementary school days, and that I was fortunate enough for them to like me. And of course, there's always those that maybe the playground bully, that older child who seemed to be intent on harassing everybody else, that child who seemed to have social problems. I guess that's pretty common. I have put here in this second, there's 2 frames that show what I would think of as young people, young adults, perhaps in their 20s and then perhaps in their 30s. And I've just put the word song underneath both of those panels because I think that the Song of Solomon is about new love. It's not just about young love, but it's about new love. People who do not really know each other. They haven't spent a lot of time with each other, so they're exploring their personalities. They're finding out about each other, and everything about them is still a mystery. I remember those days, and those are wondrous days, and those can happen again. Sometimes when people are 50, 60, 70, or 80 years of age, the circumstances of their life might lead to their losing a mate or finding a new mate, and there that new love can reassert itself again, so that it's not just for the young. The next 2 frames I've called enduring love. And this is not just old or seasoned love. I think of it as love that lasts. Love that lasts. I think at different times in human history, love that lasts becomes more scarce. I don't know if we will ever see a time again when, I used to decry when I began preaching and marrying people, one of the things that pastors do, that 1 in 4 marriages at that time in the United States, the statistics told us that 1 in 4 marriages would end in divorce. It just seemed to be a stat. Now it is 3 and 4. 3 and 4 marriages will end in divorce. And then there is eternal love, because I do believe that two people who are children of God are going to spend eternity, and if they wish to be in one another's company that can do that, I believe there's going to be great freedom and great liberty and a whole universe to explore. We have really no idea what relationships between us, each other, will be like in eternity. Jesus said, it's really not going to be like it is down here. It's going to be different. I know sometimes when there's a death in the family, I know that I've used this phrase. I know that I've heard it often. We describe someone, and it is a phrase that we use because we're seeking comfort, or we're seeking to comfort someone. We say, well, they're gone to a better place. They're gone to a better place. Every time we have a birthday celebration this evening. We've had several of those lately. I think we celebrate birthdays more than we celebrate anything else in our family, my family, Terry's family. I don't remember Danny and I ever having a birthday party with a pony or a clown or a birthday cake or candles when we were kids. It just wasn't done. I guess my mom and dad had probably never even seen anything like that. But somebody in Terry's family figured it out. Well, actually, we started doing that with our two children, Jonathan and Paris. We had parties, and we invited everybody in the family to come, and they would come. And we would have cake and ice cream and all. So that, I can't claim that we started that, but Terry's family did. And sometimes when I'm in the midst of all that, I'm less in the midst of it than I used to be. I guess there was a time when I always sought to be the life of the party. Now they go over there and poke me every once in a while to see if I'm still breathing.
Amen, that's right.
Let's go poke Pops. Let's see if he's still moving. I have no inclination to be up doing cartwheels anymore, or magic tricks, singing songs, or leading cheers. I'm very happy and content to still be the family chronicler and photographer. I guess I'll continue to do that as long as I can hold the camera up. But when I'm in the midst of all of that, I look around and I say, I can't think of heaven as a better place than this. If my grandchildren are not in heaven, then there's a possibility that heaven is a wonderful place, but it may not be a better place. If my wife is not there, and I know that I have family members who are in heaven, and it will be wonderful to see them, to be reunited with them. And I'll see Jesus. And heaven will be a wonderful place. But listen, God has gone so far out of his way. That's a human expression. God never goes out of his way. God has gone so far out of his way to so bless me and my family that it's just not characteristic for me to think of heaven as going to a better place. It's just going to a different place. So sometimes that might not be comforting, because someone who's lost a loved one, they might think, the best place in the world I could think for them to be is to be here with us. Well, eternal love is something for us yet to discover, I think, or to learn about. Here's chapter 3, and we're going to read a few verses here. I read through them, and I said, okay, those are PG rated. I can read those. I don't know if Joanne's old enough to hear this or not, but I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. If she gets too embarrassed, she'll just have to forgive me. On my bed by night, I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. I will rise now and go about the city, in the streets and in the squares. I will seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him and found him not. The watchmen found me as they went about in the city. Have you seen him whom my soul loves? Now, something about this, you see, people that know you know who you love. So she doesn't say, I'm looking for the king. She doesn't say, I'm looking for Solomon. She wouldn't say that. I'm looking for the one that my soul loves. And everybody knew who she was talking about. I hope that your life has people whom you love in it and people who love you. If you do, someone might ask someone acquainted to you, who do they love? I don't know if I hear that question. Who do they love? Who loves that person? Scarcely had I passed them when I found him whom my soul loves. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of her who conceived me. When it appeared that I was going to be not only baptizing people and performing funerals and burying people, that's what we pastors say, well, I buried so-and-so the other day. And actually, there have been quite a few funeral services that I've presided over as a minister where we actually took shovel in hand afterward and actually did the work that family members often have done in the past. Most often these days, it's some kind of civil worker that does, or someone who is hired by the funeral home, digs a grave and covers it. In all of these things, I was also going to be performing weddings. Weddings always make me more nervous than anything else that I've ever done and do in ministry. I'm always afraid of making mistakes. Such an important time, a great, wonderful memory. And I want to do well, and I want to, I want to do a part, and I do with the bride and groom's consent, of saying, it's important to understand all of this. You're having this as a part of your ceremony. I often ask them questions. I used to do marriage premarital counseling. So I could talk with them about things like, what are you going to have? What's going to be the pieces and the parts? We're going to have a unity candle. Do you have any idea what a unity candle is? What it means? We're going to do sand. Like pour sand together. We're going to do this or that. We're going to have these kind of colors and these kind of flowers. This kind of dress. This kind of suit. Do you know what that? Everything has a meaning. Do you know? And more often than not, I found out they really didn't care what it meant. They just wanted it to be pretty. It didn't take me too long. I used to require, if I was going to marry someone, they had to go through at least 4 or 5 premarital counseling sessions. And then, after doing that for just a very few years, I gave up entirely. I would look at these 2 starry-eyed people sitting at my desk before me, not hearing a word that I was saying. And I knew that they were going to have to find out about marriage, and they were going to have to find out about life the same way that I did. That I couldn't tell them anything. They had already made up their minds. And they already knew how everything was going to be. You know, in our many years, we know that things are hardly ever the way we thought they were going to be. Things are not now the way we planned for them to be. Life is like that. And so we've come to understand that anything can happen, anything can go well or wrong. But here is one thing that was always a part of my counseling. The guy you're going to marry, it's very, very important that he needs to be the kind of person you take home to mom. I held him, would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house. Now there's something implied there. Maybe he didn't want to go, but I got a hold of him. I got a hold of him, and I said, we're going to see Mom. And he says, oh, come on now. Do we have to? And he said, yeah. If we're going to go any farther with this, you're going to meet my mama. Now, in modern songs, do you know what they say? This is what they say. They say, you got to put a ring on it. You got to put a ring on it. Because it's about jewelry. If you want me, if you want a relationship, if you want to proceed physically, you got to put a ring on it. You know what they used to say? You got to go meet Mama. I've told this to young people, and listen, there are all kinds of mamas out there. They're not all gems. They're not all Mother's Day material, I assure you. I've looked at many young men, I said, if her mama don't like you, this is going to really be hard. Miss Daisy always liked Danny better than she liked Liz. Beth Evans loves me more than she loves any of her kids. That's not true. But I know Beth loves me without question and without doubt. And I never quite knew about her dad because he's not quite as vocal, or I guess I could say that Bob at least puts up with me and has for many, many years. Next week it will be 44 years that we've been married on September the 3rd. But I tell these young boys, and I've married people who say, well, my mom and daddy are really against this. I think, your mom and daddy and your mom and daddy can be the best friends you ever had. Love you and support you. They're going to help you. Now, I know that all families are not ideal. All families are not like mine. I know there's some very, very poor excuses for moms and dads out there. I know that. And not everybody's a gem. But here, this woman was very close to her mother. She says, I grabbed hold of it. I said, we're going to go see Mom. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. She's already gotten to a place now where she feels like she can advise others on the whims and ways of love. Well, that's just the audacity of the human heart. Many years ago, I learned about C.S. Lewis. I found out that many of my colleagues would quote Clive Staples Lewis. He was an Oxford professor, an English professor, who was known as an apologist. He was a great Christian thinker of the 20th century. He had been an atheist, and then he became a Christian. And I heard my colleagues in their sermons and from their lessons constantly quoting, almost as much as Charles Haddon Spurgeon. Spurgeon gets quoted a lot. C.S. Lewis said, and they tell you what C.S. Lewis said. The first thing that I ever read by C.S. Lewis, though, was not his theology. It was one of his children's books. I thought that would probably be the place for me to begin. I was young in my faith. He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. There were 7 volumes, the first of which was called, or entitled, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And they were allegorical stories. I went from there to reading Mere Christianity and the Problem of Pain. I believe I've probably got in the dock. I could probably name them all after some prompting. Surprised by Joy. He was this age or older when he first married. He married a woman named Joy Davidson. You would think he had new love. And then they were not married for very long when she contracted cancer and she died. There's a BBC miniseries. It circulates around every once in a while. Anthony Hopkins plays C.S. Lewis in it. It is called Shadowlands. The Shadowlands, and it depicts centrally his relationship to Joy Davidson, her illness, the very, very brief time of wonderful joy that they had, and then the brevity of it and her passing. He was devastated. C.S. Lewis had always talked about This is the meaning of pain. This is why there is evil present in the world. This is why through great tragedies and calamities, God is moving, and this is a part of God's working. But C.S. Lewis had never had great suffering, pain, and devastating loss in his life. He never had. And then he did. I can pick up some of Lewis's writings, and I can tell you if he wrote this before joy or after joy. One of my favorite preachers was Ron Dunn. Ron's many years ago gone home to be with the Lord. But on a Thanksgiving day, many, many years ago, Ron's son took his life. I had heard Ron preach many times before that and heard him preach in person. I'd listened to his sermons and read his books. That death of his son was a tragedy that changed his life and ministry. And I can listen to his sermons I have on cassette, and if they were before the death of his son or after. Someone asked Ron one time, he said, when your son died, did you lose your faith? He already had an answer because he knew that he talked a lot about faith and people were going to ask him. He said, well, I guess I lost that zippity-doo-dah kind of faith. That zippity-doo-dah kind of faith. I lost that. But he said this, I've never had to go back and change the words of any sermon that I've ever preached about the love of God and about pain and suffering and God's grace to meet all things. Somewhere, I have a collection of audio tapes that are actually the broadcast voice of C.S. Lewis teaching on the four loves. He is far more British than I had actually imagined. He is such a better writer than he ever was a speaker. It's very boring stuff. But I have read the four loves, and I listened to his voice because I wanted to hear what his voice sounded like. It's like people often compliment me. I do most of my work and my computer work by telephone. They compliment me for having a nice voice. Say, yes, I have a voice and a face for the telephone and the radio. I'm not much to look at, but I thank you for saying that at least I sound acceptable. The four loves. Tom T. Hall has a song. As I've shared with you, I don't like to say that I hate things. Hate this, hate that. Real close to hate one of Tom T. Hall's song. I love. And he says, I love little baby chicks, I love hounds, I love baseball, and I love you too. I'm thinking, he's singing this to someone he loves, and they're thinking, it sounds like you love just about everything. He has a long list. It's one of those songs that doesn't rhyme, doesn't seem to have much reason, but I love summer when it rains and spring when it shines. I love you too. And I can't remember, was it a car commercial? I love baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet.
Right.
We love a lot of things, don't we? Oh, relish. I love relish on my hot dog. Love. I love baseball too. And I love this. I love you too. The Greeks had four primary words that are often translated love. Some of these are not even found in the Greek New Testament at all. But they were recognizing the fact that we feel emotionally differently about a lot of things. The word storge, it just simply means affection. Storge is the Greek word for like. I like him. I like her. She likes me. Do you like me? Check yes or no. That note always frightened me. Do you like me? I like you. Do you like me? Check yes or no. There's a country song that's kind of like that. And affection, storge. It's not a deep commitment. It can be about all those kinds of things. It can be about baseball, apple pie, or the most commonly consumed pie, which is pumpkin pie.
No way.
Then there is friendship, philia. Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love. Philadelphia. Philia. Some runners came to Jesus one time when Jesus was teaching, and they said, now this is something, said, he whom thou lovest is sick. Now, the woman in the Song of Solomon said, have you seen the one whom my soul loves? They came to Jesus and said, he whom thou lovest is sick. They didn't say, Lazarus is sick. They said, he whom thou lovest. And the word that they used there was the word philia. Your friend. The one that you love like a friend. We don't know how Jesus and Lazarus became acquainted, but every year Jesus' family would travel from Nazareth to Jerusalem for the holy days, Passover. And when Jesus attended Passover as an adult, he always stayed in Bethany. You know, that's where he stayed. That's where he went. And that's where Lazarus and his sisters lived. And it's just a little bit outside of Jerusalem. Just a little town, a little village. And probably some of Mary or Joseph's people were there, and maybe even kin to Lazarus and his sisters. And every year when they traveled to Jerusalem, they spent the night, or spent their whole time there in Bethany. And somehow or another along the way, we know Jesus loves everybody, but he had a friend named Lazarus. The Greek word eros is the word we get our word erotic from, and it's physical love. It is romantic love. It is physical intimacy. It has to do with sexuality. That word doesn't appear anywhere in the Bible. Eros is not used. It doesn't mean it is not approved of in the New Testament. It's just simply there was no occasion for it, for its use. But it does imply that the Greek people knew that was a certain kind of love. The most commonly used theological word are what we would think of, I've often thought of as a Christian word, or as a godly word, is the word agape. I think of it as sacrificial love. It is giving love. That I think you are more important than I am. I'm giving myself to you. Agape love. One of the most famous exchanges was between Simon Peter and Jesus when Jesus was asking Simon Peter, do you love me enough to give your life for me? Sacrificial love? Or to lay down your life? Do you love me sacrificially? And Peter said, we're just real good friends, Lord. We're just real good friends. Well, finally Jesus changed gears. He said, Peter, are we really good friends? Are we really good friends? And finally Peter said, yes, Lord, we are really good friends. But some people say that he finally came around to saying, no, I love you enough to die for you. But he never did. He never did say, no, Lord. And then Jesus told him immediately after that, he says, Peter, you go about anywhere you want to go now and do whatever you want to do. You had your own business. You're a grown man. One of these days, they're going to put shackles on your hands. They're going to lead you about where you don't want to go. was saying, Peter, you may not be ready now. And you denied me. To avoid giving that sacrifice, but he's saying, Peter, one of these days you're going to be ready. Now, let's close up. The most popular, or the most commonly known verses. Song of Solomon 2:1 says, I'm the rose of Sharon, the lily of the valley. So that is where that phrase in our modern hymns come from. Chapter 1, verse 2 says, May he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Chapter 2, verse 3, like an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. In his shade I took great delight and sat down, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. She said, when you love him, I could just eat him up. He was just sweet to my taste. I could just eat him up. He has brought me to his banquet hall, and his banner over me is love. We used to sing the chorus. It's one way to peace through the power of the cross. His banner over me is love. It's one way to peace through the power of the cross. His banner over me is love. It's one way to peace through the power of the cross. His banner over me is love. His banner over me is love. Your oils have a pleasing fragrance. Your name is like purified oil. Therefore, the maidens love you. This is something she was always conscious of, or she believed. Probably it was correct. It could be problematic, though, for young couples if he believes that all the boys are in love with his girl. Or if the girl believes that all the girls are in love with her boy. That could be a problem. What you're really saying is, he is so wonderful that everybody loves him. She is so wonderful that everybody falls in love with her, but that can deteriorate into something else. But it's intended to be complimentary. For behold, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. I'm going to skip that next one. The last one says, sustain me with raisin cakes, refresh me with apples, because I am lovesick. Give me something to eat. I'm lovesick. Yeah, I'm proud of you too. Now let's draw me after you and let us run together. Terry never says that to me. Let's run together. No, you go ahead. I'll catch up. The king has brought me into his chambers. We will rejoice in you and be glad. That's a funny way of saying that. We will extol your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you. And he said, I can see why I love you, because I love you too. Let's go run. He said, no, never mind. Let's go on down to number 11. I am black but lovely. You thought that phrase came out of the 60s, and it didn't. It's old. I'm black and I'm beautiful. O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. If you yourself do not know, most beautiful among women, go forth on the trail of the flock and pasture your young goats by the tents of the shepherds. He says, I just want you to know, I want you to be able to go anywhere you need to go. Take care of whatever you need to take. I have told them to leave you alone. Remember that part of the story of Boaz and Ruth? She was going to be coming into his fields. And he went to all his young men. And he said, all right. Leave her alone. And they said, yes, sir. That's what that verse right there means. He said, you just kind of come and go as you want to, because I've had a talk with them. Everything's been taken care of. Well, that is all that, for propriety's sake, that I am inclined to follow. And but you get you a glass of iced tea, and I've always recommended get the Living Bible or some modern translation, and go read the Song of Solomon, read it all, And it is a wonderful story, but I believe it is only and exclusively about the love between, the physical love between a man and a woman. And it gets a little sweet and syrupy. It's a little graphic. Don't read it out loud. I believe all of you are old enough. Okay? God bless you all. We will begin next Sunday at a study of the book of Isaiah. I'm looking forward to it. My computer's chosen this time to update, Andy, so that's what it's doing. No way out of it.
You know what I thought of?
What?
There was a Jimmy Rogers song back in the 60s, or maybe 59, Kisses Sweeter Than Wine.
Yes, ma'am.
That sounds a little familiar.